All right, hello ladies and gents, my name is Jack Griffiths. I'm a UK guitar player and I've had the good fortune to be invited out to beautiful, beautiful Italia. So ciao. Kind of the main reason for making this trip was to check out some new things that the guys have brewing. So I've been a big fan of what Cornerstone's been doing for the last 2 years. I think I've probably been aware of the brand. And in that time, pretty much everything that I've tested from Emilio has just been right to my taste. And I think the reason for that is because I like to play with as much dynamic as I possibly can. Not a huge amount of overdrive or distortion as well. And that is often the way that you can tell the quality of a pedal, at least for me, because if you're playing with a great guitar and a great amp and as nice a touch as you possibly can play with, anything that's in between all that stuff is very, very important. And so that's kind of a good barometer for me, if you like, as to the quality of, at least the dynamic quality of a pedal, and obviously the tonal quality too. And probably the most important thing when it comes to dynamics and guitar pedals, the thing that people obsess about, are fuzz pedals. Now, not everybody plays that way, not everybody likes to play with constantly thinking about how hard they're picking, how high their volume control is, where their tone control is. And so the idea behind this new pedal from Cornerstone, which by the way has another great name, the Nero fuzz, the idea behind this was to be the fuzz pedal for people who maybe don't like to use their guitar volume that much. However, if you're like me and you do, it still really rewards that kind of style of playing. So I've been playing this pedal a little bit this morning, and already I feel like I know it very well. I'm playing this amazing Cornerstone Aurora guitar with a couple of fantastic amps. We've got a Bad Cat Cub and a vintage Fender Bassman. So that's already hard to go wrong with. Whatever's happening here, therefore, is very, very important. Really, I can kind of count on this already as being such an important part of the sound that I don't have to turn it off. And indeed, the playing that you heard me doing at the intro there, the pedal was on the whole time, all the way from real sparkly, kind of shimmery clean, and then when I turn the volume up, it just blooms, it blossoms. So the Nero, as I said, is kind of designed for people that maybe don't like traditional fuzzes, so I'm very hesitant to call this a traditional fuzz pedal, but if you want to use it that way, into a kind of a clean amp, you can do that. The main benefit to this, and the reason you can do that, and kind of use this with any amp, is all down to this comp control. So this is a very important control. And essentially what you've got here is not only a fuzz pedal, but you also have Cornerstone's Gladio SC preamp in here too. So it's like a preset version of the Gladio, but what that gives you is kind of already a cranked amp kind of feel. So normally if you play a fuzz pedal or any kind of overdrive or distortion pedal into an amp that's completely clean, you find it sounds maybe a bit fizzy, maybe a little bit thin, and once you turn the amp up, it's great, but you can't do that all the time. So the idea that Emilio had here is, with this comp control, to utilize the Gladio circuit with a fuzz circuit so that the two are working together. And what this control is actually doing is affecting the clean blend of that Gladio circuit, right? So you've got the fuzz sound and you're affecting how much of that essentially is hitting the Gladio. So let me kind of demonstrate how powerful that control is. And if you're finding that you're listening to it and you're thinking, I'm not really maybe hearing what it is that you're trying to put across, I'm telling you it's all about the feel and how it feels under the fingers. So let me demonstrate. I'm going to start with the comp. I had it at the start about 10 o'clock. I'm going to turn it all the way off and then gradually bring it up to 100%. And hopefully you'll hear what I'm trying to say. Okay, so as I explained, the idea is that basically the more you turn it up, the more you get the kind of traditional squish and compression that you would have if you turned the amp up. So what I described earlier on about saying that some fuzz sounds just don't really work at low volume, but when you turn the amp up, it comes alive and it sounds great. The volume doesn't really change there, but everything is dependent on this comp control. It's really, really important. So to me, I like to have a little bit of it, but not too much, because I'm already playing with a fair bit of volume today. So the nice thing is it's never going to get too compressed. I can just turn it down, kind of the louder that I make the amp. And the quieter the amp is, I can just turn this up again to compensate. So it's really simple, but a really, really effective control. So the main way that you would voice this pedal, aside from the very standard traditional volume, gain and tone, all of which are kind of, I've got the gain and the tone about 1 o'clock, so pretty neutral. The way you voice this are with these two voicing controls down here. You've got voice 1 and voice 2. It's actually the same voicing, but you switch between two different preset options. So with this foot switch on the right here. So right now I'm on voice 2 with this red LED. When I press this, I go to the gray color, which is voice 1. So I've set them very, very differently. Voice 1 is at 9 o'clock. Voice 2 is way up at about 4 o'clock, almost all the way up. The way I find this works really well is with the voicing being higher, it kind of sounds more like a traditional fuzz into a cranked amp to me. And that's what you were hearing at the start. That allows you to really work with the guitar volume. So to demonstrate, for example, if I use this neck pickup, pedals on, there's a lot of fuzz, but I can get really, really clean sounds. Okay, so that was all with voice 2 and with it set much higher. And I think if you're the kind of player that likes to work that way, all about the dynamics on the volume control, that's where you want to set it. And then use the tone to kind of fine tune. And I realized just experimenting, in fact, I'll show you. You can kind of set the tone anywhere. It's a very musical range. It kind of works all over. I had it set about 1 o'clock, but even all the way up, it doesn't get shrill. You just get even more kind of sparkle when you turn down the volume. Okay, so that's with the tone all the way up, and I really like that. You can't really do that with a lot of pedals where you just go to extremes with the controls. You can do it here, and if I was to do the opposite and turn it all the way down, that's where you start to get those nice kind of Clapton, Eric Johnson kind of woman tone kind of things, when the guitar volume is up full anyway. So that was with the tone all the way off, maybe a little bit dark for this guitar, but if you're playing a Tele or a Strat or something with single coil pickups, that tone control is going to be your friend. The other way I think the tone being lower really works is when you switch to the other voicing and have it set much lower. So let me demonstrate what that does. You kind of get less of the cleanup on the guitar, but you get a softer attack, and it kind of has this gated kind of fuzz thing to it almost. With the lower tone, it's going to sound really, really thick and really massive sounding. And then I'll turn the tone up so you can hear how it sounds in voice 1 with it set lower as well. So you hear how drastically different the cleanup on the guitar is, and that may not be to your taste. I personally really like it, and then when you're up full, there's this amazing kind of bloom that happens to the notes. So when you're playing single note lines, maybe, I don't know if this is the way Emilio intended it, but I kind of prefer having the voicing set lower for like single note lead stuff, and having it set higher when you want to be really dynamic and maybe play some rhythm. And the great thing is you can just switch between them. You can also switch between them externally. So if you have a switching system or some kind of remote switcher, you can use that and switch between the two voicings without having to touch the pedal. So I really like that. I also turned the tone up, and that blooming thing kind of happens even more. So it goes from being very, very fat and rich sounding to turning it up, and it just sounds almost like a cranked vintage amp at that point. So I'll keep the voicing lower. I'm going to turn the tone up all the way again so you can hear how it sounds different. And then I'll switch between voicing 1 and 2 as well so you can hear the impact of the difference once again. So I actually really like the tone being up full, pretty much. And then switching between the two voicings, I think you hear it really clearly there what it's doing. I keep calling them the two voicings, by the way. Once again, you can set both of these any way you like. You can have them really, really close if you like, but the way I've got it set right now is voice 2 is set really drastically to the right, voice 1 is set really drastically to the left. And I think the contrast works really nice. There's not a huge volume difference either, so you can switch between them without having to worry about, oh no, is my solo sound going to become much quieter or much louder or whatever. You kind of got that's already been worked out for you. So the last thing to experiment with really, I guess, is just the amount of gain that this thing has. So I'm going to stay on voice 2, which is set higher. I've got it set at 1 o'clock right now. 1 o'clock is kind of the sweet spot on all pedals, in my opinion. But as we've already demonstrated with the tone, works really well wherever you set it. I think the gain is the same way, so let's check that out. And I switched to the other voicing right at the end. So basically, all the controls super interactive, but I think because the pedal is so dynamic straight out of the gate, it's not one of those tweaking kind of pedals really, in my opinion. You kind of set the voicings how you like, you set the comp how you like, you vary the tone depending on the guitar you're going to play and the amp that you're plugging it into, and you set the gain where you like. You can even have it up full like that, and just work the volume, turn the volume down to 2 or 3 even on the guitar, and it just cleans up. And that's what you want out of the fuzz. Now I get that maybe you're the kind of player that hasn't vibed with fuzz in the past. Maybe this is going to solve all of those kind of quirks for you, just because of the way it feels like the amp is already cranked. And by the way, I don't think I demonstrated, but here's how the amp is actually set, you know, pretty clean. So to me, it just kind of feels like another channel of the amp. Now I know that's kind of a cliche thing to say, but I think what Emilio's done here is allow you as a player, if you've got a great guitar and a great amp setup that you already love and you want to experiment with fuzz a little bit, but you're maybe not quite sure how it's going to work, it's just going to work. And if you're an experienced fuzz player and you really like to work the guitar volume and so on, it's also going to work. And I'm also told from Emilio that the input impedance on this pedal means that you can place it anywhere. So it's not like a traditional fuzz where it has to be the first thing that the guitar pickup sees. you could place this anywhere in your signal chain, within reason, I guess, and still get very similar results. And I've got to say, the cleanup on this thing, I mean, these pickups aren't particularly high output, but the cleanup ability of just turning down the volume, and like for the whole video, I've just kept the pedal on. I know this is a demo about the pedal, but the point is, it's so dynamic and it works so well with how I'm used to playing guitar that it can just stay there the whole time, and it can be buried underneath a pedal board and just be remote switched if I wanted to with a like a loop switcher or something like that. So it's a clever thing. So I hope you enjoyed. This is just basically a first impressions, and I hope that it makes sense. If you've got any questions, leave them down in the comment section below. But I think I've kind of covered everything I wanted to cover about this pedal. I guess the very last thing to do will just be the real extremes of the voicing control. So whereas I've been jumping between one preset and another preset, I'm just going to use voice 2, turn it all the way off, and turn it halfway, then turn it all the way up, like I did with all the other controls.